that this is our agenda for the day. And already, because I started late, you didn't get to hear the wonderful song, which was John Mayer's Say. So before you start watching this recording, please go back and listen to it. Anyway, again, good morning to everybody. And here we are, we've got people and from St. Croix and from St. Thomas, beautiful St. Thomas, online with us this morning. We're expecting a few more. So as we go through, if you're coming in a little bit late, please just note where you're listening from on the chat room as we go through this. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through the GHOST protocol, and we're going to explore that a little bit. Where did it come from? How does it work? Why does it work? And really those questions, why it works, how it works, and when it works, are kind of the keys for exploring GHOST. We're going to uncover the principles behind it, where it is based in theory, and we're going to look at the significance of it, what it can do, how it can change a conversation. Many of you know that when you walk into a room, you can tell almost immediately whether or not there's a good vibe, let's call it a vibe, or a bad vibe, a tension. If there's a tension in the room, you understand that almost immediately. And what I think GHOST does for you is gives you an opportunity to create a different kind of vibe, okay? Because it's kind of in the ether. It's this way of being, this way of holding the space for people that is gentle and honest and open. It's using specific examples and making people feel safe in a space while they are talking, right? And to keep them talking so that things can be resolved, so that decisions can be made, so that relationships can be built. And so you're just holding this space for people. And that's the significance of it. And the possibilities are endless. You can apply it to almost any situation that you find yourself in. If you go into that situation with the GHOST protocol in mind, it really can make a difference. And we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at exploring not just the possibilities of when you can use GHOST, but I'm going to ask you to create a plan of action, your own plan of action for when you might use GHOST next. And at the end, I'll ask you to just, email that to me or email it to UVI-PULSE, and we'll email it back to you in 30 days, and you can check in with yourself to see whether or not you've met your own commitment to yourself, which I think is a very important piece of this. So here it is: gentle, honest, open, specific talk. It's just an acronym, right? It goes on your hand. Gentle, honest, open, specific talk. And if you remember that, especially the gentle piece, as you go through, that will really help you deal with any situation that you find yourself in. I promise. It's a protocol for high conflict conversations. Okay? It's a stance taken in human conversation and social exchange, and that way of being, as I said, that holding the space. It's appreciative inquiry and action. Some of you will be familiar with the theories of appreciative inquiry, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through here. But appreciative inquiry is really about, it's sort of the precursor to positive psychology. And this acronym and the use of it is based in positive psychology. It's about seeing, we say in Canada, seeing the puck in the net before it's there, or seeing the ball in the goal. Whatever metaphor you want to use, it's about being positive about that and moving into a positive future by creating it first. We're going to talk about red zone and green zone and how people stop conversations and they stop relationships and projects and everything when things get a little emotional, things are not quite right. And this little tool, this, all-inclusive tool, a universal tool, can just move stuff a bit, just a bit, so that it can move into the green zone and become a sustainable outcome. And it feeds the need for conciliatory gestures. That's what we need to change our position from a negative to a positive, or from the red zone to the green zone, is this shift And it occurs when you use conciliatory gesture, which I'll talk more about. It also improves any relationship quickly. Just teaching you to speak and listen in a slightly different way. And if you're really good at conversations, you probably do this already. This is not anything new. This is actually a discovery. In good conversations, this is what happens. Right? So that's kind of our outline for today. But just before we get started, I'm going to set up this poll and ask you how familiar you are with PULSE. So if you could vote just by clicking on one of those, whether you use PULSE all the time, whether you've taken a certificate program, you have a basic introduction, or this is your first taste of PULSE, because that'll help me understand how much time I need to spend with the actual PULSE frame. Ghost is just a part of the PULSE frame. It's not the whole thing, but it does help people understand where to begin with this. Okay. So if you could just vote by pressing one of these little buttons. We have about half of the people in. Sorry, I'm going to take a sip of coffee. It's very casual. Okay, look at this. Can you guys see that? Somebody let me know. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Great. Okay, so everybody's new. That's very interesting and fun. That's cool. Okay, let's just move on a bit. Here's what PULSE looks like. Okay, let me show you what PULSE looks like. This is what PULSE looks like. PULSE is a frame, a conversation frame. It's actually three-dimensional. I don't have my little model here, but it is. And with the PULSE frame, it's a conversation frame. I'm just going to briefly explain it to you here. It begins with prepare. You prepare for the conversation by setting a protocol. The protocol is the GHOST protocol, and that's where we'll be focusing today. But there are other pieces to this. There's a protocol, there's a purpose, and there is a process that is followed. And the process spells PULSE: prepare, uncover, learn, search, and explain. So it's a 5-stage process that's used as a mediation process in high conflict situations. It is also used to just organize a meeting or have a conversation with your teenager or whatever you need. If you need a sustainable outcome from a conversation, this is a frame that you can use to build that conversation within. Okay, so it's not really a model, it's more of a frame. So it starts with prepare, where you get ready for the conversation by asking questions about how the conversation will occur. And that's where you outline the protocol. And then in the uncover stage, you uncover the topic or the reason why, or the purpose of the conversation. What are you here to resolve? Answers that question. In the learn stage, you get an opportunity to share with each other about what's important to you about the topic that you've uncovered in this one. And then you move, once you answer these questions about why it's important, you have criteria for looking at the future in a different way. And so in search, you're going to look for, brainstorm possible solutions. And then in explain, you're going to actually write down a plan of action. So it's prepare by answering how the conversation will proceed, uncover the past by asking what are you here to resolve, looking at learn, where people get a chance to share and come up with criteria for resolution, and looking through search with possibilities. We open up that field of possibilities, and then explain, you actually end up with a plan of action. And so we move from fight, flight, or freeze at the bottom where people are less likely to be on the same page, through a shift in that learn stage that I'll talk more about, and it's where the conciliatory gestures and the ghost protocol comes in. And then you move to a place where you're now relaxed, you've released any concerns that you might have, and you're beginning to relate to the other person. So you can move into the future together. And that's what Pulse is all about. Bringing people from that red zone through up to the green zone, and to explain where they have a plan of action moving forward. Okay, so that's basically what Pulse is. What Ghost is more a ground rules or protocols thing. And so in high conflict, we do use it to speak gently to each other, to be honest and say, we ask people to be honest and say what they're thinking, to be open to what other people are saying and allow it to influence their version of things, which is different, right? You can be open to hearing them and never ever agreeing with them. And agreeing is different than understanding. And so with Ghost, it's more about understanding the other person, not necessarily agreeing with them, but at least giving them a place where they can say what they need to say and be heard, right? To be specific and use examples for clarity, and to keep talking. To thinking and not talking can be dangerous. So right now I'm just going to put on a short little video for you. It's from our YouTube set, and you can go to YouTube and just put in Pulse. The video was showing you. Notice that here, down here in the, I don't know if I can show you this, but down here in the notes, there is a, I'm just going to bold it now. That's the www.youtube.com, and watch. If you can cut and paste that, you'll see the video that I showed you, and it will be brilliant. I'm sure you'll love it. Okay. So let's talk about the ghost stance. And as I said before, it's part of that when you go into a room, when you approach someone, there is this feeling that you get. And so in this situation, if you have that ghost stance, that gentle, honest, open, specific talk approach, then things can turn out better for you, right? It alters the previous versions of things. And I want to talk a little bit about that. A friend of mine always says there is always another chance to have a happy childhood. You can look back on something and you can change your perspective on it, and it can really make a difference to the relationship that you're in. I always use an example from dealing with my son-in-law, who is a great guy. And sometimes he does and says things that I don't necessarily agree with, right? And so I have two choices. I always have the choice where I can disagree with him strongly and just, avoid the situation. That's one option. I can disagree with him and I can move towards him with my strong sense of what's proper and what should. I could take out my should wand. I have one here. My should wand, and I could should on him and say, you should do this, and you should think this, and you should behave in this way. I could do that. Or I can go into a conversation in a gentle, honest way and work at, and takes work sometimes, understanding his perspective. What is it about this and the way that you're approaching it that I don't get? What's the missing piece of information? So really, Ghost is about being curious. That takes courage. So there's two sides to it, right? There's courage and there's curiosity. So, for example, something happened. I was driving past where he works, and there was something that was bothering me about the way that he had approached things. And so I decided to stop in at his office, and he made me a cup of coffee, and we sat down. I did not bring up the subject. I just offered him an opportunity to speak and listen together. And he brought up the subject, and the two of us were able to chat about it. He could hear my perspective and I could hear his. And the way I did that was by listening first, right? Because you can win yourself a hearing if you will listen first. I came away understanding in much better detail his perspective and where it came from. And he also came away a little softer on the issue We were able to come to a resolution that made us both at least satisfied, if not particularly happy. And we're both Leo, so we have this really interesting relationship where, it's kind of, a win or lose kind of situation. But in that case, we were able to both win a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. You can reinvent that thing in your head, that stance in your head, and you can open that possibility up and say, okay, I didn't, the way I'm acting right now is because I didn't have a happy childhood, but maybe I did. Maybe there were pieces of my childhood that weren't so bad. Maybe I should just revisit that a little bit and take a different approach to things. And that's what the ghost stance allows you to do. You choose from the past, because there was a day or two when I had ice cream when I was a kid, when we went to the beach or whatever it was, and maybe focus on that positive piece rather than being stuck in, the day that the house burned down or whatever happened, right? So you choose from the past those things that will influence you in the present, right? And you have to be courageous in this present if you're willing to do that, to go back and re-examine. And then you can create a future, and that can be a positive future if you choose to have a positive future. I mean, the only thing that separates us from other animals is that choice. Like, we can choose. And that's an important piece of Ghost. Ghost is appreciative inquiry in action. It honors the other person in a poetic way. And appreciative inquiry is based on assumptions, and these assumptions are just listed here. Really, there's the poetic assumption, the poetic principle, if you like, the positive principle, because in Ghost, you're looking for the positives. As I said, you're looking for the days when you went to the beach, when you had ice cream, when you had a good day with your brothers and sisters, and that was a different scenario than maybe you have in your mind about your childhood now. So looking for the positives, recognizing that anytime you ask a question, you change the situation. And so that's what I'm saying. If you go into a conversation asking positive questions and anticipating a positive outcome, that can change everything. And all of this is based in the theory of appreciative inquiry. Okay? You can create the future that you want. It's a constructivist thing. You deconstruct the past and you move into creating our reality because you have free choice. And if you can unleash that free choice principle and allow everyone to have free choice, then you can move into a better conversation for sure. Ghost unleashes the 6 freedoms, and they're right here. These are the 6 freedoms associated with appreciative inquiry. The freedom to be known from the past, right? Giving everybody an opportunity to explain where they're coming from, as I did with my son-in-law. The freedom to be heard, which I also gave him in that opportunity, and the freedom to be positive. I was listening for positives with him, and I wasn't reinforcing the positives when I heard them. And so that would unleash that freedom that we know is so powerful in appreciative inquiry, that moves people up and towards a relationship, a strong relationship that is very welcoming and can withstand some pressures, right? You also have the freedom to choose. You have that, and you invite other people to that. The freedom to act or not, and not acting is acting. It's a choice, right? And the freedom to dream together, to be in community, and to think about what's possible, right? Not just that one thing that you see coming because there's this train on this railway track and this could be really, really bad, right? To dream about, okay, what if the train slows down? What if, the light switches? What if that other train isn't on the same track as us? There's all kinds of things that you can do. You can play what if and reorganize the outcome for sure. And as I said, this is based in positive psychology. There's a Wikipedia explanation of that. Okay. And it gets us to this place where we're talking about going green. going green. Because this is actually moving, right? We end up in conflict or in difficult conversations here in the red zone. Somebody says something, you perceive it as a threat, then you move over here and you respond emotionally, and you have this reflex that means that you actually create another trigger which they perceive as a threat, and here we go. We're going around and around in this negative red circle. And that's exactly what happened to my son-in-law and I. There was a trigger. I interpreted it as a threat to me. My first response was, no way, that's not happening. And my reflex was to fight him, right? Because the reflex here is fight, flight, or freeze. That's what happens. And with him and I, it's usually fight. You know, he's the father of my grandchildren, and there are certain things that we have to fight about. So that, when I do that, that becomes a trigger. He perceives me as a threat, and away we go, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze, around and around. So what I did by just, you know, sitting down and talking at the desk was changing that perception. So now I'm no longer a threat, right? I'm somebody he can respond to differently. He can make me a coffee, which then that's a trigger for me. Okay, this is good. Things are going well. And away we go. We talk openly about the conversation, and we go green. It becomes a sustainable relationship because we're in the green zone. And we can stay in the green zone as long as we use gentle, honest, open, specific talk. Okay? You'll see that the yellow zone is the caution zone. And it was just in Europe, in Edinburgh. And I really think it's interesting because we talk about stoplights, and in Alberta at least, there's a red light, and then it goes green, and then it goes yellow, and then it goes red. So when you're going, there's a yellow light that warns you that it's going to be a green light. And sometimes you go faster, and sometimes you slow down and you stop. Well, in Edinburgh, there's also a red and orange together that allows you to know that there's going to be a green light. We don't get that here. I thought it was really interesting that would be a really cool thing to have as part of this discussion, because if you get to the trigger and you can see the possibility of more green, then you'll stay in this green zone. If you get to the trigger and you don't know, you get here and you're not sure which way you're going to go, whether it's going to be threat or connection, then that's different. But it's just interesting to watch, because the red zone and the green zone are very much that, the stop light and the green to go light. And in between, this perception change that happens, perception shift in the middle. So the way you do that is to prepare people with voluntary vulnerability, which is part of that conciliatory gestures thing. And then, again, you'll see PULSE here: prepare, uncover, learn, search, and explain. So you prepare people in the page to recognize voluntary vulnerability. You play what if with them. What if that person really isn't out to get you? What if it's just something that's bothering them, right? And you talk about that voluntary vulnerability piece, offering your own conciliatory gestures and saying, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that that's how you felt. Because most situations that are in the red zone are there because there's a missing piece of information. And if you can share or uncover that piece of information, they all go, oh, I didn't know that. Let's do this. And things change. You can watch it. It's magic. Okay? In Uncover, it's more about nurturing that positive in the relationship. When I ask questions like, when was the last time you had a really good conversation? And what made it good? And what would it take to get back to that kind of conversation? And so you pull from their memories the places where things weren't like they are now, where things were different. Where, as we talked about, the childhood was happy, and we were at the beach, where the relationship was good. And if you go to our YouTube stuff and you watch the videos, you'll see evidence of that happening in those videos. Learn how to nurture and cultivate growth through dialogue in that learn piece. You're going to look for the positives. You're going to look for chinks in the armor, places where you can go into that negative armor and find that little bit of positive green. There's a little plant growing out of the stone wall, whatever it is. And you get to the point where you can see those and you can nurture them and you can grow them. And you can search. In search, you're going to look for those possibilities and open up that future so that people have more options than just train on the track headed for disaster. Now the train has lots of things that it's going by that are nice and pleasant, and there are all these possibilities. It could actually come to a different destination. Somebody threw a switch, and we're not on that track anymore. We're headed to positive futures together. And then explain appreciative futures. The positive things that can come from that are really important here. Okay. Conciliatory gestures. I'm going to open another pod here for you. And I think we'll start with poll number 4 here. Okay. How did you feel the last time someone genuinely apologized to you? What did that do for you? What was your response? Were you feeling relieved? Were you feeling, I put warm inside, but you know what I mean, this kind of a nice, gentle kind of feeling? Okay. Some people are changing their views, their points of view. Just click on one of these for me. Then I'm going to broadcast these results. And here you can see that people do feel kind of relieved or kind of warm inside or vindicated. It's actually a biological response that we have. You can't help it. It's like fight, flight, or freeze. There's this release, relax, relate thing that happens when someone offers you a conciliatory gesture. Whether that conciliatory gesture is, you know, I'm really sorry that happened, or whether it's something like, you know, when I started here, I really thought things were great. And then we follow it with, but now, right? And the but becomes that verbal eraser. So what we want to do is listen for the things before the but, because usually there's a softness in it, and it's a conciliatory gesture that as human beings, as animals, we have no choice but to accept as non-threatening and therefore connection with the other person. So, and you know, you can use that to your advantage if you choose. You know, if you apologize or if you admit some kind of ownership of a situation, you are more likely going to have a different approach, a different outcome from your conversation. Going back to my conversation with son-in-law number 1, he and I were sitting there, and he, you know, he brought up this topic, and so I would naturally say, well, you know, that's just me. I like to do things in that way. And, you know, it has nothing to do with anything except that, you know, this is what I had in mind. And so he heard that as conciliatory. You know, I was admitting to the things that he thought were possibly true, right? Because here's the thing, you have to give one to get one. So I give him a conciliatory gesture, it starts that cycle, and it's a natural biological instinct that we have. It happens in most social animals, except for crocodiles, I believe, crocodiles and human beings actually do attack adult members of their own species. They're less likely to if there's some conciliation or conciliatory gestures happening. And it's part of an inhibitory reflex that is biological, that we back off when somebody else shows voluntary vulnerability or weakness. It can happen like an apology. That voluntary vulnerability can be a look that somebody gives you to say, oh, Dad, you're probably right, I shouldn't have done that. That look in and of itself can change the cycle. Okay? And being ghost-like is a conciliatory gesture, just moving into that gentle, honest, open, specific talk. Watching the clock here, and I don't have much time to continue with this. I'm going to go a little faster. Improves any relationship quickly. You shift from compassion, you shift from red to green, from rejection or threat to connection, right? From threat to inclusion. And there are all kinds of other shifts that occur once you do this. And so these are kind of the why you would use ghost. And that's the same slide that we looked at earlier because it does improve relationships. But let's talk about how. Right? Gentle. And I use gentle, not respectful, because out of respect, we hold things back. Out of respect, we don't say everything that we're thinking. Or out of respect or even disrespect, we may think, oh, this person is not worthy of what I'm thinking right now. And we hold it back. So respect is a bad word. You know, I try and avoid that. It's not a bad word. But the construct or the idea that comes out of respect is not the same as gentle. In gentle, you find a way to cushion what you're saying. You're deliberate with your words. You choose them carefully because you want to speak so the other person can keep listening. Say it so they can actually hear you. Because what happens is you're a bit inflammatory and boom, they're in the red zone again, right? In the red zone and the green zone, there is kind of this shift that occurs there that really, I'm just going to draw with this. So you kind of go green zone, or I'm sorry, red zone, move over to green zone, and then suddenly somebody says something otherwise, and you go back into the red zone. So you want to be deliberate with your tone, deliberate with your words, cushion your blows, and be impeccable with your words. Say what you mean. Say what you need to say. Okay? So just one more poll here for this one. So how did you feel the last time someone asked you to say, or when you had a chance to say what you need to say? And I actually did feel heard in the conversation living with my son-in-law. I really, there's this kind of, this catharsis, this cathartic thing that occurs, right? And it looks like a lot of you have had the same reaction, right? Okay. It is biological, right? And if it's not landing, as some of you stated that it didn't change your state, it might be because it's not, you're not perceiving it as genuine, or they're not perceiving it as genuine. So there is that need to make sure you're in that space where people are feeling, not just saying and doing. So there's that really concentrated need to be in that emotional place. Okay, thank you. So being gentle is important for sure, and it's part of the first two, right? Gentle and honest. Being honest, say what you need to say, keep no secrets, say what you are thinking, be open with your own perceptions of things. Find a way to do it so they can keep listening. So in a gentle way, say what you need to say so that they can keep listening. Sometimes people are honest and brutally so. And some people are gentle in such a way that they forget to say their own bit. They forget to put forward their own perspective. What you need to do is line those two things up. Be gentle and honest. And with being gentle and honest gets you a lot further. Right? There's an engagement piece there that really works well. You're not psychologically prepared to move on until you've said everything that you need to say. Holding back information is disrespectful, and sometimes we forget that. We think we're doing it out of respect and being nice to the person. It's not respectful to keep what you're thinking inside. Okay. Open. Be open to hearing what they're saying and allow it to change your mind. Don't just say you're being open. Say, okay, listen to, as I did, to the perspective that my son-in-law was sharing with me, going, okay, Yes, I understand where he's coming from now. I get it. And that allowed us both to come to a place where we could come up with some other options that were much broader, much more future-oriented, and allowed us to maintain our relationship, a good relationship, a lasting relationship, at least till my grandkids are grown up. Just kidding. That's Canadian sarcasm. I learned that Canadians are quite sarcastic while I was in Edinburgh at the Fringe. We have a reputation apparently. But I'm not going to take that personally. I try not to take anything personally. I think being open takes courage because you really don't want to change your mind. Really, but you don't. I'm good. This is how I feel, and this is the way things are going to go. But being open really does get you curious and courageous, and really does help build relationships. Using examples is important for clarity. Words and meanings, words have different meanings, and we all know that. And clarifying for understanding is really important. I found that out in Edinburgh as, people were, I can't even think of a word that was just not a word I was expecting to hear in that context. But they use cheers a lot, and they use mate a lot. And we use cheers when we're toasting someone, and we always have a beer in our hand because we're Canadian. And so when someone says cheers, in Edinburgh, they mean good morning, they mean thank you, they mean you're welcome, they mean everything. They say cheers for everything. And so things like that, check for understanding, check what they mean. Who are you toasting here, bud? And it's not that. They're just saying cheers, thank you. And talk. Always do your best. That's from Don Miguel Ruiz and the 4 Agreements. It's a great book. I suggest you read it. Without conversation, the situation, the world, the relationship doesn't change. If I'd have just kept driving by that office, I'm sure that my son-in-law and I, we probably would have eventually had the conversation, but it really did help us to sit down and do that. Help me. I think it helped me. I'm going to make that assumption. But not talking leads to the erosion of communication and understanding. And I didn't want that relationship to break down. That's an important relationship to me. So talking is what separates us from other creatures, and it allows us to maintain relationships. So keep talking. Don't do TNT. Thinking, not talking is dangerous. TNT. Explosive. So how can ghost be applied? Let me just give you a list here. There's 25 ways to use this. And I'm not asking for them from you, but please, if you have extras, add them in. But, you can use PULSE, and you notice I crossed that out here and put in ghost. For self-talk, you can be gentle with yourself and honest with yourself. Works really well. You can use it for personal relationships, for working relationships, for decision-making. It's used in mediation, even in our courthouse here in Alberta. We always begin, we don't say, we're going to be ghost-like. We say, okay, speak so the other person can keep listening. Be gentle with them. Be honest and say what you need to say. Be open to hearing what other people are saying and allow it to influence you. Be specific and use examples for clarity, and keep talking. And so we say that piece at the beginning of a mediation, a negotiation, or conciliation, or a facilitation, and we hold people to that. We hold the space where people need to be gentle and honest. And sometimes they're not. And when they're not, it's interesting to me as a mediator that someone will point at me and say, she said to be gentle, when the other person's not being gentle. So they almost self-correct. It's kind of interesting to see that happen. You can use it in hiring and firing and performance reviews, team meetings, performance management, all of these things. And even for writing your emails, just keep that in mind. Be gentle and honest, be open, be specific, and talk. And it can change things for you and for your relationships. Right? So I'm going to ask you now to send me, NancyLove@PulseInstitute.com, your commitment. Okay, and that will be returned to you in about 30 days with what you've agreed to do and say. So, and you can see that now we've gone through here, prepare, uncover, learn, search, and explain. We've covered all of these topics, and hopefully that will give you some encouragement to actually use the ghost protocol to just inform your next encounter, especially if you find things are going a little sideways. Gentle, be honest in a gentle way, be open and be specific, but keep talking until you can find a resolution. Okay? So that's kind of it for me right now. I did want to let you know that first of all, let's do some questions. If you have questions or concerns, could you type them in, please? If not, let me thank you all for coming. We've got about 4 minutes left. We'll deal with some questions and some things like that. I want to let you know that you can, these are the courses that are coming up and they'll be on the UVI website. The next webinar is Power, Listening with Both Ears. And that'll be a free webinar that you'll have some opportunity to join as well. In the same way that you joined today's webinar. I see that my email is, okay, I'm going to type it here in the notes. Okay, actually, I'll just make it a little bit bigger for you. So Nancy Love at PulseInstitute.com will get me your email. And Zenzi, following today's webinar, you will receive access to exclusive discounts for upcoming UVI-PULSE events. Visit us at iloe.uvi.edu. Okay, and these, I will be there in September. Yay, in sunny St. Thomas and in sunny St. Croix. So we're going to do the first 2-day introduction to CM, which is conflict management. There'll be a 2-day introduction on the campus at St. Thomas on the 9th and 10th. On the 11th, I'm going to do a personal well-being workshop for 1 day. It's based on shift, and it's based on 5 different measures of well-being: intellectual well-being, emotional well-being, relational well-being, physical well-being. We'll talk about body as well as mind, and spiritual well-being. So it's sort of a package, and I will go through that. It's kind of separate from Pulse, except that it allows you to be in that ghost protocol a lot easier when you have a sense of where you are and what your well-being is. On the 15th and 16th, we'll repeat the Pulse intro to conflict management on St. Croix, and then on the 17th, we'll do the shift personal well-being piece, 1 day on St. Croix. On the 21st to the 25th, we're going to do the Pulse Mediation Certification 40-hour program. It's a 5-day program on St. Thomas. And after that, we will also have a professional train the trainer session on the 27th to the 30th. This has a prerequisite that you have to attend the Pulse MedCert, the 5-day program. But the goal here over the next 5 years is for me to shift what I'm learning, what I've learned in all of these years of living on this planet, and all of the intellectual property to UVI. And so we're looking to train people to be able to deliver these programs as well. Okay. Copy of your presentation. Yeah, we can. The presentation today has been recorded, so you'll have a chance to look at that. And also, when you talk about getting a copy of the presentation, what will happen is we can mail you the actual recording of it, so you can see it again. That's not a problem. And you'll get there's another surprise email. That's all I'm going to say about that. But there's more information coming to you, and I don't know, should I say, Sensi, what they're going to get in the mail? She's typing. Just a second. yeah, we want other people to join us and encourage other people to join us again on September 8th for the power webinars, and give us some feedback. I mean, be very interested. What we usually do in a Pulse course is ask for 2 stars and a wish. So while you're emailing me how you're going to use Pulse, please, also send a separate email, because I don't want to send that back to you, but send a separate email to say 2 things that you liked about today's webinar and 2 things that you would like us to consider changing. So 2 stars and a wish. Oh yes, and my ebook that includes everything I've said today and more about Ghost. And not just Ghost, but then introduces you to other skills that we use. Power, paraphrase, open question, wait, empathize, and reframe is power. And heart, listening with heart, which is hushing, empathizing, attending, reflecting, and trusting. Okay. Thank you very much to all of you for attending. I'm glad I could join you from St. Albert, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of you in person when I come to UVI. And for those of you who are signing in from Alberta, please send me an email or give me a call, and we can talk about what's upcoming here in Alberta, because there will be programs here as well. Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to shut the recording off. And